I got to hit record. Oh, there, I'm
Yeah.
recording now. I got to hit the
You have
record
to
button
hit
to
the
get
record
going.
button
Yeah.
and then we can start. And hey, there's two things that happen though right before you hit record. One, before you messed it up, I wanted to really highlight you got to three again.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of you.
Yeah.
Very proud. You didn't even use your fingers.
Thanks.
And then you found the record button. So congratulations, dude. It's a great start today.
Thanks, man. I've been working with my son. He's 3. We've been counting to 3. We've been counting even higher than that. So I'm getting better every day.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's what it's
Thanks,
about.
man. Yeah. Whitney, welcome, man. Good to see you.
Happy to be here.
This is Filling the Storehouse podcast, if you didn't know that. And we talk about faith, family, and financial freedom. And we'll probably talk about all of that today because I know you encompass all of that into your own life, into your business. And so I'm pumped about having you. I was super humbled to be on your podcast. I mean, you have a daily podcast, which I think is incredible. And we can talk about that, in this conversation. But if you could just, I think pretty much everyone knows who you are in our audience of listeners. But for those that don't, if you could just kind of give us a little background about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'll give you a background. Do you want to know about how I got into the business?
Let's do it, man. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was in the military. I joined, and you'll learn why I tell this story. But I joined in March of 2001, and we all know that was 6 months before 9/11, right?
Yeah.
And so had no idea then that, of course, we'd be going to war. But I did find myself spending all of 2005 in Iraq, and it was an amazing experience to say the least. But glad I served, no doubt about it. And very thankful for that time. Unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home, and that's obviously a lot to deal with, and just a lot of experiences there that you can't put a price on. I mean, things you learn and things you have to do, but one big thing is that the military taught me is just have a never give up mentality. And I talk about that often because when you're in combat, it's just not an option, right? I mean, it's just not an option to give up, and people are depending on you to perform. And so I came home from overseas, had no idea what I was going to do as a career. And I thought law enforcement just made a ton of sense to me. I loved the structure and the discipline, the uniform, serving, and so I applied to numerous local agencies in Kentucky, including Kentucky State Police. And there's, I think, 1,200 applicants, and I was blessed to have one of 5 positions. And so I loved working the road as a police officer. I would have done the first couple of years. I would have worked for free if I could have, but obviously that couldn't last too long. And but then eventually realized you nearly are working for free. I mean, it's just it got married quickly after becoming a police officer, and my wife and I just passed each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage, and I discovered that, okay, wait a minute, as much as I enjoy it's just not what's best, right? It's just not what's best long term. We wanted to be that father and the husband that I felt I was called to be, and it's going to be very difficult. I'm so thankful for our men and women that serve, and in law enforcement and military, and it is just not family friendly, that's to say the least. But also I noticed guys were retiring, making like $35,000 a year, and they'd been on like 25 years or more sometimes. And I started seeing that. I'm like, okay, I've got to find some way to at least supplement my income. And this was about 2008-ish, 2009. And in came real estate. I'm like, okay, well, I started reading some stuff and learned that, it's not like one or two people had built wealth in real estate. Hundreds of thousands of people, right, have built wealth in real estate. And I thought, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too. Quickly purchased a couple triplexes in Kentucky, learned a lot the hard way, made a ton of mistakes, self-managed, trust the realtor and the seller too much, just all kinds of things. But we learned a lot, and thankfully we didn't quit there. I soon became a federal agent that moved us to Virginia, where we still live. And I did that for a number of years while still trying to grow a real estate business, but with small multifamily. I had no idea about syndication. And And so at that same time, I had another business going as well. Believe it or not, I was training horses professionally also. And so we had a farm. My wife and I had the farm we'd always dreamed of, and I was trying to do some rentals. And I mean, I would get in from, my federal agent position. I mean, it was like Superman: change clothes, go ride horses, give lessons, whatever, whatever we need to do with real estate stuff. And I mean, it was just like this never ending battle of getting it all done, right? And finally, one fall, my wife and I were at the beach, and we were just walking and praying, and we just spent a lot of time just praying and trying to figure all this out, right? Like, how long can we sustain this madness? And so, and the Lord just really gave my wife and I both peace about selling everything. Okay. And so I had established a brand. I was doing clinics all over the country. I was teaching lots of people horsemanship skills. I built really a name in that industry. And it was kind of a dream since I was a little boy. And so it was a passion to be able to ride horses and do those things. And I was selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. But what really hit me when we were on the beach that fall was that it was never going to be passive. Right. I mean, I was always going to have to be the one doing it, no matter to what level I grew that. I was always going to have to be there. And if I got injured, well, guess what? The income stops. Yeah. And so immediately I was like, okay, it's now or never. About a year before that, I'd heard about the syndication business, started learning about it, but hadn't really thought about having our own business yet, on the commercial side. And, but really the more I learned about it, I'm like, okay, I love the structure, the discipline. I love being able to grow a professional brand. I love being able to work with professional investors and professional management instead of me looking for more tenants and toilets, right? And so my wife and I said, you know what? Let's do it. We sold our farm. We sold everything related to that business, and we moved into a small house in town. I built an office in the corner of the basement, and that's just where I just hammered it out for the next couple of years.
Wow.
And it's
but all the while still doing your law enforcement gig, right?
That's right. I was still a federal agent. I was still doing it. I mean, it was like more than 2 full-time jobs for a long, long time, and doing a daily podcast. We started doing deals, and actually we had started our third adoption process as well, which the process itself was a nightmare, but yeah, all while still working full time, and couldn't have done it without amazing Brad at home. That's for sure. She did everything in the house, everything, while I'm just like, and I was there, but it's like I was gone all the time. I would sleep at home, and then my kids knew that like Sunday was the day they get to see dad. It was that ridiculous, as far as how many hours, we were putting in, but we just kept envisioning, where we're going. And almost selling the farm, I think, was a big deal. We loved being out there. And so it's like, that was what we envisioned getting back to, right? Having another farm. And we do now. But I think in that moment, it's just like, we just had to keep that in mind, like where we're going, right? Even for the whole family, even for our kids, like help them envision as best they can, like where we're going, why dad's doing all this. It wasn't uncommon for me to travel 2 and 3 weekends a month as well during that time, networking in different conferences. And so it was very difficult, to say the least, on the whole family. I mean, it was definitely a team sport within the home, to make it happen. But anyway, met many great people through that process, started building my investor base, and eventually met my business partner. That's a whole nother story I'm happy to share, but we had complementary skill sets, right? And that was a big thing, that allowed us to scale fast. And we did over 100 million last year in real estate, and we're very grateful, for that type of growth. And I mean, we went out Thursday. Actually, we did 4 large deals last year. 3 of them were $10 to $12 million raises. They filled up in 10 or 12 hours. Wow. And then we did another raise last Thursday that filled up in 3 hours. So wow. It's just, 40 to 50% of our investors are coming from referrals, and we're just very grateful. The Lord's just really blessed our business, and I can't explain it other than just the Lord's hand in it, honestly, like just the doors that's been opened and the growth that we've had. But yeah, anyway, that's wow. A little bit about how we got to where we're at.
That's amazing, Whitney. And I think, I mean, there's so much there. We could dig into any one of those things that you just said and spend a lot of time just camping out there. But I'm curious. So you kind of highlighted it as a chronological type thing, and you just naturally went into these different business opportunities. But I'm just curious, like what was how did you find those opportunities or drive towards those or pick those? Like, because they're vastly different, right? You go from raising, selling, training horses, horse riding to syndications. Like, what? That doesn't even seem like there's a relationship there. I'm really the point of the question is to a lot of our, I think a lot of our listeners would benefit from knowing that what they're doing right now, maybe they're an infantry officer in the Marine Corps, and the gap between that and running a very successful business and whatever they choose is not insurmountable, and it's not even that big. And I think you're a great example of that, but I'd like to understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a great question. They couldn't seem further apart, right? Most people in our industry, in the syndication world that we live in, it seems most have no idea about the professional horse training background, but it's really, I think it's just much deeper than that, and it's something we've all heard. It's just really a mindset thing. It's like, man, when you can set your mind on it and you're determined to make it happen, it doesn't matter if it's horse training or if it's, I don't know, whatever, something completely different or syndication business. It's really having the mindset, making things happen, and finding the who's, right? Finding the right people for your team that do have the skill sets, and being willing to expand and expand yourself, right? Expand your abilities for one, but really for me, it was just saying, you know what, this is what we're doing, and cutting off the horse training. It was difficult. I remember the day when we sold our farm, and I remember when, like, most of my horse related things, like gates and all this stuff, I sold them, and them leaving, like, I just stood there and cried, because, like, this is something I was very passionate about since I was very little. And I had reached really a higher level in that than I ever expected pretty quickly as well. But I knew that it was like now or never. And I knew I was going to have to cut this thing off for me to be very successful in the syndication business and be completely focused there. And so I think it's almost that determination from the very beginning. It's not so much that I'm really good at syndication or I'm really good at horse training or somebody's good at something else.
You are, let's be clear. You are very good at both of those, clearly, but I guess part of that, why syndication? Like what caused that to go from horses to syndicating?
Yeah. And remember, I'd had a few small rentals, but I'd really discovered that it was going to be so difficult for me to scale that, right? No matter, how many duplexes I could find or 15 units like I'd had or whatever, it was going to be so difficult to manage. And so that's the thing, when I learned about the syndication business, I'm like, okay, this makes so much more sense to me, because now I can build that professional team. Like I talked about, I can find the who's, I can find the best property management. I can find the best, people for the team, for us to get there faster and take a lot of people with us, as opposed to me just grinding, working full time and trying to do the horse stuff and trying to have a few rentals on the side and really expecting it to go anywhere. And so it just made a ton of sense. So I love just building the professional brand and really treating investors like they want to be treated. Like that's just helped us to go so much faster. I'm like that. I can do that. I love the structure and just putting processes in place. Right. I think that comes from some military and law enforcement background probably. But I love those things, so it's like, you tell us, what we need to do better. Then I'm going to say, okay, how do we get there? And let's figure it out. And we're going to lay it out. And then we're going to just continue improving those processes. And that's what we've done.
Well, there's a big jump between doing some duplexes and some single family stuff to raising $10 million on a huge syndication. And it seems like you just jumped, you just took it, and you went from triplexes to syndicating $10 million. What was it that, was it like one thing that just put you over the edge and said, go? I mean, how did you get in your mind to go to that level so quickly, or was it quick? I don't know.
I think it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
We were like, it was probably like August that we were on the beach when we had that conversation. We were walking, praying, all these things, maybe it was after that even. But our house was on the market and it sold very fast. We put it on the market. It sold December. We closed, and then the podcast started. I hired a mentor during that time as well. For the syndication business, and which was a big step for us. I think it was $12,500, and at the time that was a lot of money for us. And we thought, is this really the best decision? And I mean, now, it's just crazy to even have that thought, but, however, I think it was that October, maybe the podcast launched, and it was just hard as we could go, ever since then. And so I think it was pretty quick that we made that decision. It was just like the Lord just really shown my wife and I that that it's just, let's just do it, sell everything. And so we can be completely focused and make it happen. Like, it was just really that simple, almost to some extent, like, is this just what it's going to take? How fast, if this is what it's going to take, then how fast can we get started? Right. If that's what it is, let's get it started now.
So to be clear, is that August of like 2020?
No.
Oh, no.
When was this?
Like 17, I think.
Okay. So you've been doing this for about 4 years, for context. Okay.
Right.
Good.
And do you think the podcast, I'm just interested because, we've had you on to talk to our mastermind group about your podcast specifically and creating content. Do you think that the daily podcast has been a huge factor in your success?
Massive factor. And so I get that question, so many times a week, right? Has it been worth it? People say, has it been worth it to do a daily podcast? Because it's insane. It is. Yeah. It's insane. We've had to build a whole team around, just producing this thing.
Yeah, we do one a week and it feels insane.
And so it's, I tell you, it pushed me personally to grow very fast, right? Just my own personal development, much less our team and all kinds of things that I've learned by interviewing that many people. But it's also, everybody talks about, how your network is related to your net worth. And you think about, I've interviewed over 1,000 people, in the last few years. Versus doing one a week. Right. Yeah. But it did. It nearly killed me trying to keep up while still working full time. It was not uncommon for me to do 15 shows in a day, just back to back nonstop. My team knew that, hey, you got to fill that schedule as much as possible. Right. But the podcast, if you looked at a profit and loss statement, you'd say, Whitney, you're crazy. Why in the world are you doing this podcast? Because it cost a fortune. It did. It cost a fortune to produce that many shows and to keep that going and to hire people and whatnot. But when you look at the big picture, I can't even put a price tag on it.
That's crazy. That and that's convicting and challenging as well at the same time, because what's interesting is, and I imagine you're the same. Like, we love the podcast. We love being on, being able to talk to people like you, but it's just like it's almost impossible for me to even consider going from what we're doing, our full-time Navy thing, our Storehouse thing, and then doing this on a daily is what a huge accomplishment. I think that it's but I think it was driven very clearly by your long-term vision and this why that you must have a very strong why. And I'm kind of curious, like, let's talk about that a little bit, because, the mindset is clear. The go get it attitude is clear. Your long-term, the desire to have a long-term goal and achieve that and work towards that daily is clear. I'm curious, what kind of why drives that kind of activity?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. And I wanted to back up just 1 second and say, somebody asked me one time, we were talking about doing a daily podcast, and I wanted to mention, actually, Unum is my mentor. He said, just how fast do you want to get there? It's like daily versus weekly or whatever. How fast do you want to get there? How many people do you need to meet? How many questions do you need to ask so you're educated enough or whatever? How fast do you want to get there? And so that doesn't mean everybody can do a daily podcast. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend it for most because
it's crazy.
It's a very big toll on the whole family, honestly. And some of that you just can't even see coming, like the sacrifices my wife had to make or my children had to make, for us to make that happen for that long. And it's, and then you ask about our why. So something we're very passionate about. When we first moved to Roanoke, Virginia, when I got the federal agent position, we listened to a pastor talk. His name's David Platt. Many have probably heard of him, but he does this thing called Secret Church, and which I would encourage anyone to look up. But it's intense training for like 6 hours straight. And it's people groups all over the world who rarely get to hear any teaching. It's an amazing time of teaching. But we went to that, and this was in 2011, in fall of 2011. He was talking about caring for orphans and widows. And he and his wife had adopted. My wife and I had never been exposed to adoption before, not even thought about it. Okay. But on our way home, so he talked about how it can cost $40,000 to $60,000 to adopt a child, and how there's 150 to 60 million orphans in the world. Okay. And so on our way home, it was really as simple to us as, why would we not? I mean, it was just like, okay, like that just makes a ton of sense to us. Why would we not? I guess I'm really ignorant to it, right? I mean, it just seemed that simple. And so within a week, we turned in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And so 2 years to the month later, our first son, Samuel, came home from Ethiopia. About 8 or 9 months later, our second son, Elijah, came home through adoption. And then our daughter now, who also came home through adoption, is about 21 or 2 months old. And so our family has been greatly blessed, just by adoption and just growing our family that way. And we just have some amazing children, through adoption. But a lot of things we've learned is that so many families won't even begin the process because of that financial burden, which obviously so. And so we have calls with couples often and that are looking to adopt and just want to ask us about our experience. And often we say 40, 60 grand, and they're like, well, Whitney, that's more than we make in a year. Well, how can we even do that? And so that really pushed Chelsea and I, my wife, to begin the LifeBridge Foundation. And so where we committed half of our personal profits to that foundation, we have other large donors as well that help fund the adoption process for families, or at least provide like a large matching grant. So it really gets to get them motivated, right? Get them to commit, and then even, help them through the process of some fundraising, so that's our big why. That's our big mission behind LifeBridge Capital. It's something our investors play a big role in, but it doesn't affect their returns. I get that question often, but it doesn't affect their returns, but just that they're investing with us allows us to give in a big way.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Thank you for highlighting that for us. And I think that's a pretty huge why. Yeah. And it really directly aligns with a lot of conversations Stu and I are having, some things that we've been, even yesterday we watched this video on Alan and Catherine Barnhart, who is just this amazing multi-million, $400 million business that they effectively gave 99% of it away through a fund, to just because they felt like everything they were blessed with is God's anyways. So they wanted to give back. And I think it's such an amazing, why. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I mean, this is kind of a pointed question, but, and I know the answer to it already, but I think it's just good to highlight that I think a strong why like that pushes success so much more, and the why of really giving, and it's biblical, right? And this idea of giving more than your take, and given you shall receive, and we talked about it on your podcast a bit. I think if you do that in a way, and you put your mindset in a way that forces you to think that way, like I think huge things will come out of it. You know, the fruits of that are amazing. I mean, what have you seen through that process of just choosing immediately when you started your business that 50% is a lot. Like we're doing 10% right now.
Not for the Lord though.
It feels like we got to step up our game, right?
You know, it is a big commitment, and I would say initially I didn't plan it. I didn't plan it this way in the beginning. Okay. But like what I could tell would start happening though, when I was traveling, like I was networking as hard as I could go, I was having all these investor conversations. And, you know, and I'll say this, you know, a little bit about networking. If you go to a conference and there's 500 people there, even 100 people, and you talk to, you know, 25, 30 people, or, you know, if you're trying to raise money or trying to meet investors and they speak to that many people, you think they're really going to remember you? If you just talk, I mean, if you just talk about real estate, you think they're going to remember you? Yeah, they're not going to have a clue, most likely, who you are, you know, the next day. They might remember your face, but if they've talked to a bunch of people, probably not too well. However, guess what? You know, like I said, I didn't plan it this way, but I wouldn't just talk about real estate. I would talk about our why. I would talk about our mission and things like that. And what I started to notice was that, you know, it would give us such a better connection, right? They would see a personal side of me as opposed to just talking about real estate, where everybody there's talking about real estate. If you build the connection, you can talk about real estate later, you know, but you need that connection first, and you need that level of trust and transparency, all those things. And they can see so much of that in you when you're sharing something that you are passionate about, right? It just changes the conversation, the dynamic. And it's also something that they do not expect. And you'll see it in their face. You know, you'll see that it's something they didn't expect. And like I said, I didn't plan it that way, but I started seeing it happen. And I just think it's just the Lord's plan, or Lord's way he does things. It's so unexpected, right? But that started happening. And so I'm like, okay, wow. You know, like I can see people really connecting to that. Obviously we do share our why, you know, and our mission and what we're doing, you know, in that aspect. And we want other people to give, you know, towards that as well, of course. But yeah, that's one thing. It was unexpected, but that I started seeing happen.
Yeah. And I think that strong why also, it takes you beyond the stage of having an agenda when you talk to somebody. And what I mean by that is when you're engaging, like when we talk about our why and the things we're passionate about, like I really want people to give money to our fund to help combat human trafficking. Like I just really want that, not only for them, but I want that for the why that we've created to do that, to support that, to love the people that are on the front lines addressing that issue. And I think when we talk about it, there's never an agenda to it, right? There's not an agenda to, Stu and I didn't create a why to have an agenda to go to a conference and say, hey, we're special because this is what we do and right, you should give us money. It's exactly what you're talking about with, and I think and you know, this isn't something I've thought about, but as you were saying this is really a lesson learned for me, and a takeaway for me is that is the fact that you have spent so much time in developing that strong why enables you to go forward without an agenda, and people want to relate with and be a part of and embrace that cause. And I think that is so important. And a lot of times when we go to these conferences, you can see it. You can see the lack of genuine, just the lack of someone being genuine. And really, they just want to find out if you have money and if you're willing to part with that money for the deal. But what you're highlighting is something so vastly different. And I think it's beautiful how you highlighted that has then resulted in, you know, I don't know, $10 million raise in 3 hours or whatever you're doing now. But I think that agenda-free aspect of it is so important. And just really want to highlight that again to another reason why it's so important to establish your why. So going here forward, you have this big why. You have this, you know, this business that now is, you know, for all intents and purposes, doing amazingly. Like, what does this translate into? Where do you want to go from here?
That's a great question.
Two podcasts a day, or what?
I have people joke about that. They're like, "Oh, we need to do 2 a day." Like I'm not planning on 2 a day anytime soon. That's for sure. But from here, I think really it's a lot of focus on our team growth. And so we can grow. Well. As far as finding the who's that are experts in different, parts of our air business that we need help in, right? And not getting ahead of our skis, as far as our growth. But I feel like we've done that. We actually have 5 full-time people in the States. We have 4 full-time people in the Philippines, and we would like to hire probably 2 more people within the next 6 months, full-time in the States. And so I feel like, that kind of growth, amongst or partnered with the right team, we can just continue to grow well. Our investor base is growing very, very fast, and I'm very grateful, but I feel like still we want to be able to provide the best service possible, to our investor base. And so we just scrutinize that process. I call it the investor life cycle, and we just itemize that to death and improving that every way we can. But I would say over the next year, if we could do another 100 million, I'll be happy with that, this year. If we did 4 or 5 projects this year, that would be great. We'd love to get into another market as well. If we continue to have deal flow in the markets we're in, I'll be happy with that. But potentially maybe get into another market and at least do, maybe 5 deals this year.
So how do you find the right team? Like, how do you build that? Like, what's the criteria for building out a team? And so David and I have a business, and we have a small team and full-time employees, and we thoroughly enjoy it, and it's a huge part of what we do and what we wake up for every day. And I'm just curious, like, how you have gone about building your own team, and what is a requirement for you to work with you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's we could do probably a few shows on that.
Yeah, probably.
No doubt about it. And so I've done it numerous ways as far as finding people and hiring. And my last hire, I went through, I learned the most about hiring. Let's just say that. I went through a book called Top Grading, which I would highly recommend. It's pretty thick, but you will learn more about hiring Class A talent from this book than probably any other book I've seen about hiring, and by Bradford Smart. And he is so big. I mean, he just expresses to you the cost of a mishire, right? And you don't really think about it so much if you're new to business, right? If you're growing your first business or maybe hiring your first employer or two, you don't think about the cost of a mishire. But even earlier than that, I mean, I've used VAs for a very long time, virtual assistants, and I highly encourage people to have an assistant, have somebody that's taking the lower level tasks off you, helping you stay organized, all that stuff. So ultimately, you got to know what this person's going to do, right? Write a job description for them. Is it an assistant? Is it somebody for investor relations? Is it for somebody for asset management? What are they going to do for you? You got to write a great job description. And I like I said, VAs, I've used a ton from all over the world. They've been amazing to do maybe more like job specific tasks, let's say editing audio or video or writing show notes or, anything like that, or even just data entry. Some of them have been the most faithful employees. I've got some in the Philippines right now that are just amazing. And I mean, their English and grammar are way above mine. They're really good. But I'll use my assistant that I've just hired, or she's probably been with me 6 or 7 months now. So I created a form to be filled out, right, for if somebody's interested. But I created it 2 different ways, or the same form twice. Okay, 2 different ways so I could track it. One went to my network. I think I sent it to like 4,000 people or something, and letting people know I'm looking, to hire someone. And then I also put it on Indeed as well. And so that way I could track, where these people came from. And we probably had 500 applicants, maybe more. I mean, it was just insane, right? But who has time to go through 500 applicants? And so, but at the bottom of my job description, I had 4 tasks for them to do. And the top 2 were mandatory. The 3rd and 4th ones were optional. The first one was a 14-page questionnaire. Okay. Unless you're pretty serious, you're probably not going to fill that out. Right. And so, which is my goal, right? If you can't read the job description, you're not interested, right? And so, and on Indeed and different places, they'll just hit apply, 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 so this helps me to narrow that way down. We probably got, I think, about 30 of those that were actually completed. And so we reached out to those 30 and said, let's see, well, I was trying to make sure I got the next step. Yeah, 30 turned them in. Okay. And then I picked about a dozen that I wanted to move forward with. I called that dozen just randomly, right? I did not give any notice, just called them and said, hello, this is Whitney Lockridge Capital. You've been selected to move to the next round of hiring. And I've got 3 tasks I need you to complete by tomorrow. Here you go. Nice. So awesome. that narrowed it down to probably 7 or 8 people. And then out of those, I selected 4 to interview. And then we did tandem interviews, which I highly recommend, like you and someone else. And the interview process, which you learn from that book. I mean, he tells you to expect it to take at least 4 hours. And At first I was like, are you serious? 4 hours? But we could have spent every bit of that time. We allowed about 2.5 hours and we didn't get through all the questions. It was good though. And I did hire somebody I feel is just class A talent, but so that's a very high level fast track of what we did. But you got to figure out what they're going to do for you, right? Somebody that's going to be my assistant and have access to lots of things is somebody totally different than I need to just edit audio, right? Or create show notes, or, it's very different hires. And so think about, and I tell people, write down what you do during the day. Write down all these little things that you do all day and figure out the priority of those things and what you can hand off to somebody else. And then I tell you to go back and look at that list again. And the things you said were a priority, I bet there's still half of them you could still hand off to somebody else if you built the right process. And so you need that time back. Right. And I mean, I'm just always now more than ever, just scrutinizing my calendar. If I leave a half a day open, my team, I mean, like it's amazing how fast, it's just like out of nowhere, it's full.
Disappears.
Yeah. It's just craziness. I'm like, wait a minute, and I'll have a time block and I'll have to say like no appointments, something like that, so it's good stuff though, but still you got to have some downtime, your buffer time, some people call it, or focus time, where you can just think. I had an all-day meeting about a month ago that got canceled because of snow. Maybe it was 2 months ago. And that night before it got when it got canceled the night before, it just made my mind just start going 90 mile an hour. Like, what am I going to do with that time? Right? Yeah. No appointments got scheduled because it just happened. Right? And all that was blocked off for this meeting. And that was my most productive day in a long time. And so now every week I've got like a half a day that's like, you're not booking anything. It's just time for me to think and, work on stuff. But anyway, I know you asked about hiring, and I went through that kind of fast, but that's at a high level how we narrowed that down so we can get some class A talent.
That's awesome. Have you read the Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham?
Yes, he love that book.
He talks a lot about thinking time. I've tried to start implementing that myself.
Yes, I actually just read that chapter maybe a week ago about thinking time. It's good.
It is good.
Yeah, I think what sticks out to me is the intentionality not only in the hiring process, because I mean, you got to really be committed. And I think a lot of us, I think there's a tendency to hire to butts in seats gaps. Like, I have to fill this seat with a person to do. It may even be as shallow as I just need them to do stuff and things. And so I just need someone to do stuff and things, and we'll figure it out. And you really highlight a process that is very intentional. And I think that's so important. And then you also kind of conveniently jumped into the management of your time and being very intentional with your calendar, setting that time aside and recognizing that not only your highest and best tasks, but the time to sit down and think, and which is something that, I'm really looking forward to when I get out of the Navy, to maybe having a little bit of a capacity. I think we joke, Stu and I joke about having this capacity, and we're going to have this time, and we're going to freaking book it up like crazy. Like, I can already see it
so fast.
It's going to get filled so fast, and I can already see it. But having you say that is a great reminder to be so intentional with that process. And I think when you do that, some amazing things can happen, right? And that's an incredible tip. And I'm just curious, like practically speaking, how do you manage your calendar? Are you like a Google Calendar guy? Do you write it down? Like what do you do?
It's all so automated that it is a Google Calendar. I mean, like I have I have meeting with everybody on my team on Mondays, like individually, and we'll have some group meetings here and there for different things. But like Tuesdays, I was doing Tuesday, Wednesdays. Like I'll do 5, 6, 8 shows, interviews for the podcast on Tuesday, Wednesday, and now I've moved like at least 8 shows to Tuesdays. And now Wednesday is more of a thinking time, productive time. And then I'll have meetings that afternoon. Thursdays and Fridays are like solid investor calls right now. And so just back to back most days. And then I'll have some interviews like this mixed in. And so I'm just constantly like trying to figure out how to change that or how to delegate more, and even like investor calls. That's something I've been trying to work through recently. Like, is that something I can hand off? That personable touch is so important, right? And they expect to talk to me, and I want to talk to them. But it's like you can't, like, there's not enough time in the day for me to talk to everybody, right? And so eventually we have to build a process there. But yeah, that's my general week. I mean, that changes obviously pretty often, but my assistant just helps in a massive way, with doing all that. I mean, email alone used to take up so much of my time. And now we just built a process around that, and she manages that amazingly.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to offload all social media or emailing. That's going to be amazing. That'll be my dream come true. But did you block the top and bottom of your calendar as well? Do you have like a start time and then like I will finish at this time and this is family? Do you also schedule all that in?
Great question. So before I left my federal position, I mean, it was pretty much wide open business, until like Saturday afternoon, and Sundays were pretty much like, I'm going to be there with the family. I'm going to at least have those meals with the family this week, right? Saturday night dinner, and then Sunday, church, and just spend the day together with the family. And so after doing that for a few years, as soon as I left the federal position, I'm like, okay, I'm cutting every afternoon off so I can just be at home. So I can just be available. I built a swing set a few weeks ago. It's just been amazing to watch the kids swing and,
awesome.
Just like be there for those things, right? It's so important. And I missed that, right, for a couple of years to get this going. But yes, now I do. I time block, like I'll say no appointments are going to come in, say 4 p.m. or after. Every once in a while on a Friday, I'll move that up to like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, just so we can have more time together on a Friday afternoon as a family. But now, I even schedule 2 dates a month, with my wife. So we have that just special time together, twice a month, which we hadn't had that for years, ever. So now, it's just amazing right now. I just want to be that purposeful with that time because it's so important. That I do block that off because either investor calls will get automatically scheduled, or podcast interviews, or team meetings, or other interviews like this on other podcasts, it just happens so fast. I just have to block that off. And it's like that every week now. Like it's just blocked off unless I change it. And so even in the morning, early in the morning, I'm up about 4:45, usually something like that. And then, I just have to be very structured, with some reading time and reading, praying, time with my wife first thing in the morning as well. We'll pray together or read together. That's some of the most important time, by the way, especially if you're a believer. I mean, you'll know that the Lord speaks through your wife, by the way. And even this morning, we were talking about something and she just said, I have some thoughts about that. And I said, I want to hear it. I want to hear it. And it's she's no real estate professional, but man, it's just like, it's incredible. Just the insight, the Lord will give her. And so it's just important time, right? And then time to read the word, time of exercising. And usually at that time I'm educating myself too. I'm reading another book or listening. And then it's time to get the day started, with meetings or whatever.
That's awesome. And you have a business partner too, right? I mean, you had said that you had found your business partner and kind of the complementary, styles of what you do in your business. How do you guys, put that all together, I mean, it seems like you're kind of the face. You got the podcast. You're the investor guy. You're having all the phone calls. And does your business partner do that as well? Is he kind of more like behind the scenes, kind of doing the number crunching and stuff like that?
He's the numbers expert.
Yeah.
He is. I mean, I think he's a genius. I think he's as far as numbers and structuring deals, he's better than I ever thought about being. And that's what I wanted, right? I mean, that's what I want. That's not where I shine as far as underwriting deals, but man, he does. He is just really gifted at that, and it's amazing, just how he can think of structuring a deal and making things happen. And so when we aligned that with some capital, we were able to go places, right? And two, we talked about building a team and hiring. You just can't, in this business, you just can't do it all. If you try, like you may get a deal done, but it's going to take so much longer. It's going to take so much longer for you to make that happen. And so finding people that are experts in their, unique ability was just crucial. And he was one of those. So he's underwriting deals. Do we both look at the deals? Well, of course, but I'm not going to underwrite 100 deals. He's going to underwrite the 100. And then when he finds the few that work, well, then we're going to look at them together. But even then, I mean, it's, he's the expert in that field. And so, that's what he's spending most of his time doing. I mean, he's really the acquisitions, specialist or director, I would call him.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. One more question that just came to mind. We have a group of military veterans, entrepreneurs, primarily real estate investors. It's a mastermind group that you've spoken to before called the War Room Mastermind. And there's a lot of people in there that have like super high goals and dreams, and they're, some of them are a couple duplexes, a couple single families, something like that, but they all are wanting to get to this bigger, higher level. If there was like one thing that, like one piece of advice that you would say, like, do this to go to where I am, what would that be?
One thing. I get this question often. It's like one thing. And it's usually never one thing, but
I know.
But if I had to pick one thing, I would say hire a mentor.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say hire a mentor. I can tell numerous stories where it's like my mentor just said like 3 words, and I'm like, okay, that makes so much sense. Why didn't I see that?
And you say like hire, like spend money to find someone that's going to coach you.
Let me redefine that. Have a mentor.
Okay.
You do not have to hire someone. You don't have to pay someone, and I try to make this clear. I think you need a mentor? Yes. Do you have to have somebody that you pay? No. There's ways to find people that will mentor you that aren't officially doing a coaching program, or, that aren't officially going to ask you to pay them. But I would still say too, that if you want to get there faster, you're probably going to have to hire somebody. And for a couple reasons there, not that you have to on every case, but for more times than not, you're going to have a much higher level of commitment when you've put that, those dollars out there like that. And then also this person's then committed to you, in a big way, as opposed to somebody that you haven't paid, you haven't officially hired. It's kind of, there's a lack of known expectation there, right? You're like, you don't really know what to expect out of that relationship potentially. But I know a lot of people that have done big things by finding people that are much further ahead of them in the business, adding value to them. There's tons of ways you can do that if you get creative, and building that relationship, even becoming part of their team, right? So you can learn this business and build your network. But personally, I hired a mentor because I wanted to move fast, and it was a big process of how I found my mentor. I wanted somebody that was in the business, somebody that I could speak to directly. I did not want to coach a team of coaches under that person. I was really big on that. And somebody was just very relatable, right? And I felt like cared about my success, and I even traveled to different conferences to hear different mentors speak, and some were very obvious. It was a sales pitch for them. And I was like, okay, this is not for me. This individual is not my coach. Even though I know hundreds of people that have been successful in their program, I knew it wasn't for me. And so find a mentor.
It's great advice, man.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think you highlighted earlier is the value, the money that you put into it does not even come close to the value that you've gotten out of it. Clearly.
Oh, yeah. At the time, it does. It seems like so much money, right? But one deal,
Yep.
you know, even if that one deal just paid for your mentor, even if it paid for half of it, the things that happen after you've done the first deal, you know, it just starts to happen so much faster, right? I mean, it's so worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. These are all things, and what Stu and I also love about these podcasts. You know, we're a couple knuckleheads. We get smart folks like you on, and it's effectively a mentoring session, right? So we're taking notes, taking you know, things away from these conversations, and I'll tell you, it is invaluable. And I think that's a great point. You know, and we've been talking about this as well, and we want it to be the right person. We want it to be somebody that has a similar core values, has similar vision. If someone's not passionate about giving, then it's probably not a good fit, you know, just right from the get. You know, if their business is not built around giving, it's probably not somebody that is going to really resonate with us, and it's not going to be a great fit. And we found that, you know, in interesting ways. So I think it's great advice. I think that the time spent, the investment made is more than worth it. It's an infinite ROI, depending on what you do with that. So I think
I think you made a great point right there. And I've talked about it a few times recently and didn't think of it right now till you said that, but make sure that person's like who you want to be, like a year from now or 2 years from now, or, you know, like what are you mentioned their values, so important. Like, do they align, you know, and because there's great coaches and mentors that my values would not align with, and vice versa, you know, and they're really good at what they do, really good at business or whatever, but they just wouldn't be a great coach for me, you know? And so find somebody that you align with, somebody you kind of want to be, you know, I like looking at like how they represent themselves to the industry and to investors. Right. And, you know, what is that how you want to look, you know, right. Because you're going to be connected to them either way, and people are going to know you a lot by your mentor. Right. And so select them well, right? Spend a little time there.
Yeah. And it's gotta be deeper than the bank account as well, I think.
Right.
And a lot of people think, you know, as you start a business, you're like, oh, this could be potentially lucrative. I'll make some money. Very quickly you realize money comes and goes. It's a tool. How you use it's what's most important, and how it reflects your values is most important. And I think, you know, it's got to be deeper than, wow, this guy's a millionaire, so I want to be on his team. Because you'll very quickly realize there's a lot of millionaires out there that you want to be nothing like. And so right. I think that's that's huge. That's awesome, man. Man, I just want to encourage you as well, as we come close to the hour. I want to make sure we honor your calendar and your time. Be intentional with honoring you. And man, you've been an inspiration for us. I love listening to your podcast. You have amazing interviews, great guests. I'm always shocked at you get it, and you're very intentional about it too. You get it wrapped up in about a 30-minute block, and I think that's awesome. But hey, you're adding huge value. You're changing people's lives. You're enabling people to save, you know, to save others through adoption, and just the 50%. That goes through my head more than you'll ever know. I'm always like, man, we got to up it. We got to up our game. We got to up our game, because while it's not a competition, it is a reflection of just what's important to us, and the priorities, the prioritization, and your faith. So thank you for being who you are, brother. It's awesome. It's a pleasure to finally get you on our show. It's been something that we've been talking about for quite a while.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity. Yeah. If I've done nothing but encourage you to trust the Lord and increase your giving, then it's been a success.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to go give a bunch of money away right after this show. It's good stuff. Whitney, this is awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Like David said, I know you're a busy man. Thank you for your time. Folks, go follow Whitney. If you're not listening to his podcast and you are investing in real estate, you absolutely need to be listening to Whitney's podcast. So go check him out. Get on his calendar. I know he's a busy man, but he's going to give you a lot of wisdom. Share this podcast, subscribe, please. And most importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Yeah. And hey, real quick, before we finally close it, we will put links to the podcast, the real estate syndication show with Whitney Sewell, and make sure that you have access to that. And after that, go make it a great day.
Make it a great day.
See ya. Make it a great day. See ya.